We're live. Hey, are we live? Or there you are. I don't see any little numbers. Let's see if this works. Maybe it works. Yeah, there it is. 22 seconds. So I did a pretty long live chat last night. I was tired. And so it was a pretty day. I woke up this morning around 9 and took a shower and sun was out. I gave it a few hours around. I watched the Sunday news shows, right? And it's, like that Beatles song. I watched the news today. Oh boy. 20 million dead, and Larry Lancashire, a man, blew his head out in a car. I just had to laugh. Right? So it's kind of where we're at. I mean, every news show was like something out of Saturday Night Live. So I was watching the news and I was looking online and I looked at the cold live opening on SNL, and it was, after the, yesterday, Saturday, was South Carolina, and, Joe came in first and Bernie came in second. Now Bernie has like 60, delegates, and Joe has like, I don't know, 15. And, all the news guys, oh, Biden slammed him. Oh, it's like some kind of WWF wrestling match. Then I saw an X-Files movie, by Chris Carter, Dana and Scully and Mulder. And the beginning opens with this kid falls, there's this like cul-de-sac out in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, a bunch of houses just put on sand. In Albuquerque, there's a lot of those kind of houses because Kirkland Air Force Base is there. So, they built a lot of cheap, crappy houses. And I used to have a job. I had a lot of really terrible, crappy jobs in New Mexico. And one of them was, so they would build these same kind of houses that were just like in the beginning of the movie of the X-Files. I think it's called, Saving the Future, right? And so the first scene is these kids are playing, they're living in these crappy houses that are just put on a desert. They got the road and they got the plastic flowers because nothing grows. And the kids are running around. And this one kid is like scraping the dirt, looking for stuff, and he falls through the dirt, boom, right down into an underground cave. And he kind of gets attacked by this creature down there, right? And then the firemen come to get the kid out, and they get attacked, right? Cut to Mulder, talking to Scully, and something's going on, and they're trying to figure something out, and they figure out that there's going to be, they're in a building looking for something, and Mulder puts a quarter in a soda machine and he doesn't get his soda, so he's like kicking it and hitting it, and this plastic thing of the soda machine slides down, and you can see inside the soda machine. It's not a soda machine in there. It's these barrels of explosives and a timer clicking by. He's like, whoa, so he is getting everyone out, and he's the bomb guy has opened up the door, and he's trying to play with the thing and can't slow the ticking thing down. And the bomb guy gets out, and Mulder, one of Mulder's supervisors, comes and is there. He and Mulder, the bomb guy is freaked out and left, with the big suit, because there's enough explosives here too. And so the guy and Mulder are trying to do it, and they have the radio. Okay, everyone's out of the building. Mulder says, we can do it. The orange wire. And the guy goes, Mulder, get out of here. I'll do this. And Mulder leaves, and the guy just lights a cigarette, sits there, and waits till it blows up. Ba-boom. Because he knows. I mean, he's a higher up guy, and he stays there to go down with the building, because when they're like picking up all the pieces, they find, these 4 firemen and this kid. Well, it wasn't from this building that's like in Philadelphia. It was the kid in the hole and the fireman in New Mexico, right? And that's the start of the movie. And basically, there is this flu pandemic that is being caused by this creature that is basic alien in nature, and the cabal has known about it since like 47, and they're trying to negotiate with the aliens, and the aliens' hidden agenda is, well, we'll just waste the time of these humans until these creatures that were our long millions of years ago ancestors, and they're going to pop up out of the ground, and they'll spread this virus, and they will infect all these people, and the people will be the hosts for the birth of a new race of our ancestors, and then we'll be able to go take Earth, right? And it'll be a lot easier than trying to attack them, right? And we've already given them all this kind of stuff like cell phones and things to distract them to the point where they're basically dumbed down so much that, and what's really amazing, this movie was made in 98. And so when the building blows up, they have a scene that they shot as a movie that is exactly like all of the news footage of the collapse of the World Trade Centers. And it collapsed in the same kind of way, turning into dust. And, the people running and the big cloud of dust, it was like exactly. And this movie was made in 98 by Chris Carter. And here we are on the precipice of this, pandemic. Really don't know what it's going to do. I have some feelings about it. But what the most interesting thing is this movie, Saving the Future, it just has all of these. It was made in 98, and, it looks just fine. 9/11 comes down, right? And then the movie comes down, and they're all freaked out about, terrorists. I mean, they're like, the government is going sideways. There she is. Come here, buddy. Come here. You come on. Yes, there's one of the guys. Yes. And came down to visit. He's a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Yes. Yes. He is a good boy. And so I watched that movie, and it was like, again, that kind of, hey, this is what we're going to do to you. And the scenes of the people having, being infected by this virus. So I would suggest you guys. Oh, look at that! It was 1 minute, no, 10 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. I would suggest you go watch that movie, right? X-Files. And it's interesting, so it was on cable. So, it was just on one of the myriad of cable channels that shows movies. And it's interesting that they did it on this weekend. And that we're like, oh, it's going to be okay. Can you imagine, can you think what America is going to be like if this thing goes the way it did in China? And why wouldn't it? And now in China, they have an authoritarian government that everyone's, used to jumping when, the man tells them what to do. Not so much in America. In China, no one has any, nothing to, assert their own authority against authority. Here, there's a lot of bozos who, well, it's going to be interesting. That's all I got to say. And I'm talking about this window of opportunity. And the opportunity is to be a human, not to be a mud puppet, right? Not to be a jerk. To be human and be empathetic and to be loving, to be hospitable, to be sharing, caring. And no one's there. 11 minutes and no one's there. Well, I talked for almost 5 hours last night. And the chat was pretty prolific. And a few people, as usual, there was about 6 people who chatted. And there was about 30 people who could have chatted, but they didn't. And, later on, there was about, another 1,000 who watched. And so I do these as a shamanic ceremony. So that's why I do these stream of consciousness stories, I just ramble on and people are chatting over there and I'm reading it and I jump, I kind of go back to the top and read everybody's thing and then start commenting to what they say and then tying it back into the storylines. And it's a stream of consciousness. So it's live. It's really live. I mean, nothing is scripted, where virtually everything in any level of media is scripted, right? There is nothing, the big whoop-de-doo, horse race yesterday of the political, thing in South Carolina. It was scripted. I mean, they've already picked who's going to win. And actually, my feeling is we're not going to have, we're going to have martial law, this little, flu thing. And, on the average, between 20 and 60,000 people die in the United States every frigging year of flu, right? Flu is a coronavirus itself. This one is novel, meaning it was genetically engineered. It's really obvious. You can see the markers of where CRISPR has chopped up the RNA, right? They don't talk about these things, but a few people have. And what was quite interesting, kind of in the lead up to the first news conference with the president and Mikey Boy and all the smart people, Dr. Fauci, Anthony Boy, and Dave, and that lady who's really smart. So, Donald went on and just mumbled about things. And then, said, I'm putting Mike Pence in charge. The guy who, when he was governor, they had an outbreak of AIDS due to intravenous drug use. And CDC and his own state health department wanted to, give people brand new needles for needles that they would turn in. And he basically said, I'm going to have to pray on that. And it took him a couple of weeks to, because, within that period that he had to pray on it, about 10 people died. He caused 10 people to die. or you could look at it that way. Really they shot themselves with drugs. But anyway, he was thinking that these people aren't good Christians. They should, why should I? So he involved his prayer with God, like God had to tell him what to do instead of going along with the science, right? So that's why a Saturday Night Live, you should go look at it because it opens with the guy playing Mike Pence, and he goes, "Yes, and our omnipotent president has made me in charge of this little thing, and we have to, I'm in charge. I'll be looking at the science, right? He's got the air quotes, and I'll let God tell me what to do." And then, he had all these people come in, and it's really quite hilarious, but it's scary because it was so close to the truth that was like, whoa, right? So, but before they had that, they had a number of people who worked at CDC and NSI and the National Lab. And there was this lady from the National Laboratory. And people think National Laboratory, they're making atomic bombs. No, they look at everything scientific. Like Brookhaven was the place that basically, this guy gave like $100 million to this nonprofit entity that was part of NYIT, New York Institute of Technology, to figure out the human genome, like in the 80s, right? And they said, oh, this is going to take us like 50 years, right? And so a friend of mine, a really close friend, really brilliant woman, basically figured out an algorithms and a technology to automate the process, right? So she put this together, NYIT gave her the cash to get it running, and then it was sent over and basically run at NYIT. So she went over, at Brookhaven National Laboratory. So what this entity, nonprofit that got $100 million said, oh, it's going to take us 50 years to do it. They did it in 6 months using my friend's algorithm and her automated system. Bingo. So, and that was 1987. And it was, she invented the things that became CRISPR and other automated, computerized, genetically processed entities, right? So that was another look. She has so many feathers in her hat. She looks like an Indian chief. And she has so many PhDs. It's surreal. And we're good buddies. Most men are scared of her. But she likes me because, I know a lot of things about a lot of stuff, and I'm not an expert on anything. But I know enough to hang with her, and she can talk to me, and I can understand what she's talking, and I can ask intelligent questions where she goes, ooh, didn't think about that's a good one, Al. And that's why she still, was she is so amazingly brilliant that she is basically isolated. And she has got a great sense of humor, and she's a sweet person and loads of fun. And we used to be sweet on each other. And people would never, I got some great pictures of her because I would take her to these avant-garde things, and she'd be sitting there going, right? And everyone's going, who's that? And oh, she's with Al, and they because the women in my life were always people go, how can anyone, they're like too wow, and then they go, why is she with him, right? So that was my buddy, and so I'm sure she's working on this, but this is in the 80s. And when she got, so she was, basically, she got her first PhD for writing the algorithm. She was the first human being to render in digital domain a three-dimensional object. And that was that Pixar lamp. That was her PhD thesis. And she helped start Pixar. I mean, she gave those guys that she knew at Stanford that algorithm, which was the platform they built all of their animation on. And so, again, she got a nice little feather in her hat. And, and she's kind of like me. She does things like that. And those guys spent the rest of their life just doing that. She went on and did something else, right? And she got a feather in her cap, and and she moved on. And so, like I said, she's got, I think, 5 PhDs. She has a chair in Oxford. I mean, this girl is off the hook. And like I said, she's loads of fun, very sweet. She's a hard worker, so it took a lot to convince her to take vacations. But once she and I would go on vacation, she was everything she ever did. That's why I liked her a lot. She put, okay, we're gonna have vacation. Well, we're gonna have a vacation, right? We're gonna be sweet on each other. We're gonna, and she liked the fact that I was a similar character, right? And what the other thing she liked was I had been doing certain things long enough so I knew everybody in that category, and she did the same thing. But her little categories were so freaking rarefied. I mean, the only other woman who was as brilliant as her in computer graphics, these 2 women started SIGGRAPH, which is Special Interest Computer Group in the IEEE. And these 2 women were the first 2 women, not to be in the IEEE, because there's lots of women in the IEEE, but who were like in the rarefied presidential office, on the board, right? And she used to take me to those board meetings, and I'd be like, dressed as I am today, as a bohemian, right? And I would walk in arm in arm with Louise and Christine on either arm, and these girls were the smartest people in the room, right? And they were pretty powerful too, because they weren't just on that board; they belonged to a lot of other things. And that was one of the things that gave me the cachet to, start this NGO at the UN, right? So I got to see in the late 70s and early 80s, that I was in the room with folks who made decisions like in that movie, The X-Files, to bring on the alien virus to the human race. I was in rooms like that going, And one thing I realized, that the 2 women I was with were smarter than all of these other morons put together. And they're the people who are running things, right? So I was watching the TV show, waiting for, the orange pinhead to come on and tell us his wisdom about this pandemic. And she was basically giving very good information, describing this is a lot like flu, and the biggest problem is that no one's sharing any of the information. And, we have gotten, she was the person, a microbiologist. And she said, I've looked at the RNA strand and it's, she was trying to say that this was a weaponized bioweapon without saying this is a weaponized bioweapon. And she kept, saying it's a novel virus. And then the stupid interview. So what's novel about? I mean, why do you guys keep calling it novel? And she would basically say, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, we've never seen anything like this. Well, every other virus in our biology is we've seen it before. It does different things. It mutates a little. It gets exposed to this, that, and the other, and pops out in ways that, oops. But she was really explaining quite well. And one of the things she really said, and the lady said, well, what's the problem about, why aren't there, and this is before they said, oh, this is, going to go public in the United States like it did. It just, I mean, why everyone's freaked out was that in a space, why our stock market went like this? Because in a space of 3 days, for about 3 weeks, we're talking about China, and really no one would have talked about it, but they were seeing things on YouTube, and so the news, so enough people were watching these YouTubes, and people, getting carted away and burning whole, apartment buildings with people still in them, and people just falling over. Anyway, and people like, in going to work, and these other guys, in spacesuits, hosing them down. And I mean, can you imagine what that's going to be like in this country? Well, maybe. So, and then, in a space of 2 days, Italy, South Korea, and we got a lot of people in both those places, especially Italy's like the 7th largest economy in the world. Virtually every cell phone, if it's not coming from China, is coming from South Korea. And we have 60, 70,000 of our military. We have maybe 40,000 guys in uniforms, but we have other people there too. And they're getting exposed, right? And so then it pops up in 10 different countries like that in Europe and North Africa and other parts of Asia, which means 8 weeks. China understood what the problem was in October, and they really didn't do anything about it, right? Because they were like the orange pinhead. They didn't want to freak anybody out. And I wasn't in the room, but I think they got another, one thing I've heard from my sources is that it came from, the two good people to look at who have this down really good, 3 people, is Max Igor, in Crow House. He has some buddies, Bob and Dave, that have a really good little thing on this. The Q is for the Queen. The show on the Crow House is a really good one. And Critical Thinking with Cliff High. He in the 60s and 70s was a bioweapon scientist. So he really has it. On his website, he has the bio war handbook, what to do and what not to do. And so that's very good. And Dana Ashley. So those 3 guys, excellent, right? But there are a lot more other folks who are really good. But you have to, now Dana Ashley, she's very religiously, she's coming from a biblical point of view, but she's very smart and has the technology side of it down, especially the electromagnetic component of this, right? And Max Igor in the Crow House, he's got lots of contacts all over the people, so he's got it coming from many different angles. And Cliff High at Critical Thinking, he's a bioweapon scientist, so he's coming from that point of view. So you want to see what it is. So I was watching these guys go on about this. Like in December, I was kind of seeing that and then noticing nobody else was in the media talking about it at all. And so then, it kind of blew up in China, and still, in December it blew up in China, and still it wasn't really appearing on, the mainstream media. It wasn't until mid-January that it even kind of got a nudge, right? And it wasn't till the first week in February that, something's going on there. But by that time, the horse was out of the barn, because what China did was, so they knew this because they either did it on purpose, but China, you have to realize, is the most surveilled, thing on the planet. They got everyone's face. They got, so they knew who was sick, who was, little nose was, or coughing. So they knew all of this, like I said, back in October. If they didn't do it on their own, because as soon as this thing really hit their country, what the thing that the main body, the president, all that was worrying about wasn't worrying about the economy with America or none of that stuff. No, what he was worrying about was Hong Kong. I mean, that was a virus he was worrying about. That whole we want freedom was going to break out into the rest of his country, right? And if it does, China, forget about it. It just falls apart. But the people like Henry Kissinger, brought China into Henry Kissinger and George H. And the neocons and the neoliberals, with the New World Order motif. But they're just thinking about money. It's the people, it's the hidden hand above them that are talking, thinking about, things that are like the X Files, right? And so, Chris Carter's another one of these guys that was putting stuff out for the general psyche, in the 90s for the general consumption, along with Steven Spielberg and a few others. So all of this stuff's in our psyche, it's in our DNA, but we're so distracted by the Kardashians. Most people can't, you ask most Americans, what are the three Camry uh, tertiaries of our government, and said it like that. They go, huh? Is that a condom? They don't know. It's the Supreme Court, the executive, and the Senate and Congress. It's. But you ask them, name four people of the Kardashians. Pretty much anybody off the street can tell you that one. So all of these kind of little threads that I was looking at today kind of just hit me, right? And that's what this little thing is. Now, no, AI hasn't even shown up. No one's shown up. So here it is, 5:43, and I'm going to stop this now. And I'm going to come back at 7:30, right? As close to the light as I can. And hopefully you guys will be back here, right? And we'll talk. This is what we're going to talk about, right? Okay. So I'm going to end this here now. And I'll see you at around 7:30.